One of Fio's killers just snitched, apparently after being left alone in the interrogation room. Dave Murphy didn't realize the camera was rolling and started reenacting the murder. He starts walking around the interview room, and then he starts going, and then he walks around, and then he does it again. Murphy basically handed the prosecution everything they needed to bury him, and he even dropped names. I'm breaking it all down. Let's get into it. Killers thought the cameras were off. The murder of Charles Andrew Jones, too, better known in these streets as rapper Foolio, sent shockwaves through the rap game and had the whole hood talking. On June 23, 2024, what was supposed to be a birthday celebration for the 26-year-old rapper turned into a nightmare when he got murked in a targeted hit outside a Holiday Inn in Tampa, Florida. This wasn't no random drive-by or some spur of a moment. Beef. This was some calculated, cold-blooded, executed by who had been stalking their target all night long. But here's where it gets real spicy. These so-called killers thought they were some criminal masterminds, some real G's who could outsmart the system. Little did they know their own arrogance and straight-up stupidity would become the smoking gun that would have them facing life, sentences, or the death penalty. We talking about evidence so damning that even the best defense lawyers in the game would be scratching their heads, trying to figure out how to spin this? The story starts jumping off in an interrogation room at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, where Dave Murphy, one of the 5 suspects charged with Fio's murder, was getting grilled by the boys in blue. Murphy, this 27-year-old street soldier allegedly tied to that 1,200 gang, had been running from the law for over 6 months before they finally caught his on January 6, 2025, with help from the U.S. Marshal Service. Now, picture this scene real. Talk. You got detectives going hard in the paint, asking all kinds of questions, trying to get this to slip up and incriminate himself. Murphy's sitting there, trying to play it cool, trying to give just enough answers to seem like he's cooperating, without snitching on himself or his homies. The tension in that room was thicker than a bowl of grits, with these investigators pressing him about where he was the night of the murder, who he was rolling with, and what his role was in this whole conspiracy that led to Fio getting smoked. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment that had this street looking like the biggest fool in Jacksonville. During a break in the questioning, the detective stepped out the room, leaving Murphy by himself. In that moment, this dude made what would turn out to be the most boneheaded move of his entire life. What Murphy's slow didn't realize, what he couldn't have even imagined, was that surveillance cameras were still rolling, catching every single thing he was about to do, thinking he was all alone with no eyes on him. Murphy started wilding out in ways that would later have the whole courtroom shook. According to detective testimony during his bond hearing on January 16, 2025, this fool was caught on camera acting out shooting motions, pretending to hold a rifle. He puts out his arms like this, and it appears that he's brandishing a rifle. With one hand extended and one what I would consider the trigger finger, he starts walking around the interview room, and then he starts going, and then he walks around, and then he does it again. Can you picture this? Here's this grown man facing potential life behind bars or the electric chair, acting out what looked like him reliving the murder he was being questioned about. The detective who had to testify about this crazy behavior was so blown away by what he witnessed that he actually demonstrated Murphy's actions right there in court, showing the judge and everybody else exactly what this surveillance footage captured. But this wasn't just some random tweaking or nervous energy. This was a dude who appeared to be celebrating, maybe even getting off on one of the most heinous crimes Jacksonville had seen in a minute. The prosecution later argued that Murphy's actions showed he thought the cameras had stopped recording, making his behavior even more incriminating. To really understand how monumentally stupid this move was, you gotta understand the backdrop of Fio's murder. This wasn't some random street beef or a crime of passion. This was the bloody conclusion of a decade-long gang war that had already left dozens of bodies in its wake. Foolio, who was deep in the 6-block set of the KTA Kill Them All gang, had been locked in a deadly feud with rival sets ATK, AC's top killers. It's 1,200 out east. This wasn't just some rap beef that stayed on wax. was a real street that had been escalating through social media disrespect, disrecords, and most tragically, through violence that had touched multiple families and hoods. After the pool party, the suspects trailed Foolio to Teaser's Gentlemen's Club, Truth 18 nightclub, and finally the Home 2 suites where the ambush occurred. He had no clue that his ops were on his trail, watching his every move, waiting for the perfect moment to catch him slipping. One of the most tragic aspects of the incident was how Foolio's social media activity led his killers to it. He was posting on social media in real time as he moved from location to location. What he didn't know was that he was providing his killers with a GPS to his exact whereabouts. The hit itself was some professional level, with 3 shooters using high-powered rifles and leaving 31 shell casings scattered around the scene. This was the type of coordinated attack that required serious planning, multiple participants, and the kind of organization that showed these weren't playing around. 5 suspects got knocked for the murder: Sean Gathite, 18, Isaiah Chance, 21,
Alicia
Andrews, 21, Rashad Murphy, 30, and Dave Murphy, 27. Each one of these individuals was allegedly connected to the rival sets that had been beefing with Foolio's crew for years. The evidence against these cats was already looking bad for them. Surveillance footage showed the suspects following Foolio all around Tampa that night. Phone records revealed some real, incriminating communications, including text messages from Rashad Murphy talking about Don Julio as a way to disrespect Foolio. Digital evidence showed that Rashad Murphy had booked an Airbnb in Tampa the day before the shooting, but Davon Murphy's clown show performance in that interrogation room took this case to a whole different level. Here was a suspect facing the most serious charges you can imagine, apparently acting out the very crime he was accused of committing. The incident was so significant that it became a major talking point during Murphy's bond hearing, which went on 4 or 5 hours and ended with the judge denying bond. The prosecution successfully convinced the court that Murphy was too dangerous to be let back on the streets, and his amateur hour performance in the interrogation room damn sure didn't help his cause. The prosecution has made it clear that 3 suspects, Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, and Rashad Murphy, are looking at the death penalty if they get convicted, while Alicia Andrews, who's pregnant, isn't facing the ultimate punishment. Murphy, given the nature of the evidence against him and his alleged role as one of the shooters, is probably going to be facing the death penalty too. The legal proceedings are complex and still unfolding. Supposed to happen in early January 2025, but got pushed back after her lawyer quit with a new tentative date sometime around August 2025 or later. The other suspects, including Murphy, are looking at trials scheduled for April 2026, the deco-long street war that took Foolio out. To really understand the wild we just witnessed in that interrogation room, we need to take a deep dive into the grimy, violent world that created it. The murder of Julio Foolio wasn't some random act of violence. It was the tragic end result of a decade-long street war that has left dozens of bodies dropping and families destroyed all across Jacksonville, Florida. This is a story about young people caught up in never-ending cycles of revenge, about neighborhoods turned into war zones. Charles Andrew Jones, too, known to the streets as Julio Foolio, was born on June 21, 1998, and came up in Jacksonville's Moncrief neighborhood. His early life was marked by tragedy and hardship that would shape not only his music, but also his path toward the gang lifestyle that would ultimately get him killed. His pops got murdered in a 2011 shooting when Foolio was just 13 years old, an event that left a permanent scar on the young man and pushed him deeper into the street culture that surrounded him. Foolio got put on with the 6-block set of the KTA Kill Them All street gang, a gay crew that operated primarily in the Moncrief area and was known for getting into all kinds of illegal activities. His music often reflected these affiliations with bars that spoke to the harsh realities of street life and the constant threat of violence. On the flip side of this deadly equation was another young man whose life had been similarly shaped by violence and loss. Kenyatta Tyrone Bullard, known in the rap game as Youngin Ace, was born on February 12, 1998, in East Chicago, Indiana, but moved to Jacksonville when he was young. Growing up with his mom and 11 brothers in tough circumstances, Ace's early life was marked by struggle and hardship. His father also got killed in 2011, the same year as Foolio's father, creating parallel tragedies that would shape both young men's futures. Youngin. Ace got affiliated with the Akaka's Top Killers gang, which was named after him and represented a rival faction to Foolio's six-block crew. This rivalry would become the central axis around which years of violence would revolve, drawing in dozens of other young men and ultimately creating a web of loyalty, betrayal, and revenge that would prove impossible to escape. The beef that would eventually get Foolio murked started, getting serious in 2017 with the killing of his 18-year-old cousin, Zion Malik Brown. This incident is believed to have sparked the deadly gang war, setting off a chain reaction of retaliatory violence that would escalate over the following years. The conflict reached a devastating peak on June 5, 2018. A shooting at the St. John's Town Center left youngin Ace wounded and 3 others dead, his brother, Trevin Bullard, and 2 homies, Royale Devin Smith Jr. and Jacoby Desad Groover. This shooting was reportedly carried out by members of 6 Block, marking a serious escalation in the violence between the two factions. What happened next would illustrate just how cruel and public this feud had become. Foolio posted disrespectful content on social media, including a t-shirt with the phrase "Rest in 23" mocking Royale Devin Smith Jr., further intensifying the feud. The stage was set for years of increasingly violent retaliation that would claim numerous lives and terrorize entire communities. In January 2019, Willie Addison, known as Boss Goon, got smoked at Paradise Gentlemen's Club, an incident linked to the ongoing conflict. Also, in 2019, Lil Buck Charles Quentin McCormack Jr. and by Adrian Denard Gaynor Jr., both associated with KTA, got killed in separate incidents. Seen as retaliatory hits by ATK.Fulio himself, became a target multiple times, surviving shootings. In July 2020 in Houston, Texas, and again in October 2023 in Jacksonville, Foolio himself talked about the 2023 shooting on Instagram Live. He said, "Each close call only seemed to heighten the tension and increase his enemy's determination to take him out permanently. Both sides weaponized social media and music to fuel the feud, creating a public spectacle of their private war." Foolio dropped diss tracks like "When I See You," which racked up nearly 1 million views in 12 hours, dissing ATK members. On the other side, ATK, led by Young Gene Ace, dropped "Who I Smoke," which gained over 14 million views in 3 weeks, referencing the killing of 6 Block members and glorifying violence. These platforms were used not just to disrespect rivals, but also to recruit new soldiers and document the conflict, with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office even using rap videos to make arrests. In January 2019, the involvement of a third gang, 1200 Out East, which allied with ATK,